In a world where royal protocol dictates every gesture, where cameras capture every breath, and where millions watch for the smallest sign of genuine human emotion, one unguarded moment between Prince William and Catherine changed everything. It wasn't planned by palace advisors, wasn't rehearsed in front of mirrors, and wasn't meant for the world to see. Yet this single embrace, lasting barely 30 seconds, would become the most shared royal moment of the decade, touching hearts across continents and reminding us all that beneath the crowns and titles, love speaks the same language everywhere. What makes a moment so powerful that it stops people in their tracks? What transforms a simple goodbye into a memory that millions hold dear? Sometimes it's not the grand gestures or carefully orchestrated events that move us most deeply. Sometimes it's the quiet, authentic moments when two people forget the world is watching and simply let their hearts speak. This is the story of one such moment, and how a tender farewell between William and Kate became a beacon of hope and love that the world desperately needed to see. The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac at RAF Breise Norton, with a familiar hum of military aircraft filled the crisp October air. Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, stood quietly beside the black Range Rover, her wool coat buttoned against the autumn chill. Her usually perfectly styled hair moved gently in the breeze, and for once, she seemed less concerned with maintaining the polished image the world expected of her. Today was different. Today, her husband was leaving for a 3-week deployment that would take him far from home, far from her, and far from their young children. Prince William emerged from the operations building, his RAF uniform crisp and commanding. At 34, he carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned pilot, but those who knew him well could see the subtle tension in his shoulders. The weight of duty had always been heavy on his mind, but leaving his family never became easier, no matter how many times he had done it before. His eyes immediately found Catherine across the busy airfield, and something in his expression softened instantly. The couple had been married for 6 years, together for much longer, and the world had watched their love story unfold from university sweethearts to royal couple. They had weathered media storms, family controversies, and the constant pressure of public life. Through it all, they had maintained something precious and rare in their position, a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared laughter, and deep, unwavering love. As William approached, Catherine's professional composure remained intact, but her eyes told a different story. She had learned to hide her emotions from the ever-present cameras, but today the mask felt heavier than usual. The children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, had said their goodbyes at home earlier that morning. George, then 3, had clung to his father's leg, not quite understanding why Daddy had to go away again. Charlotte, barely 18 months old, had simply reached her tiny arms up, wanting to be held one more time. The military personnel around them continued their preparations, respectfully maintaining their distance while remaining alert to security protocols. This wasn't an unusual scene. William's deployments were routine, part of his service with the East Anglian Air Ambulance. Yet something about this particular departure felt different to those who witnessed it. Perhaps it was the way Catherine's fingers lingered on William's arm as they spoke in hushed tones, or the way William's usual military bearing seemed to soften whenever he looked at his wife. Catherine had always been William's anchor, the steady presence that grounded him when the weight of future kingship felt overwhelming. She understood the sacrifices that came with loving someone born to serve, had accepted them willingly when she said yes to his proposal. But understanding and accepting didn't make the goodbyes any easier. Each deployment brought its own challenges, its own worries that she carried quietly while maintaining her public duties and caring for their growing family. The morning briefing had run longer than expected, and time was slipping away faster than either of them wanted. In a few minutes, William would board the aircraft that would carry him away from everything he held most dear. The mission ahead was important, humanitarian relief work that could make a real difference in people's lives, but that knowledge didn't make leaving any simpler. As they stood together on the tarmac, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The constant hum of activity around them became background noise to their private moment. William reached for Catherine's hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture so natural it seemed unconscious. She squeezed back, a silent communication that spoke volumes about their connection. They had developed their own language over the years, small gestures, and shared glances that conveyed entire conversations. A slight smile from Catherine could reassure William during a challenging public engagement. A gentle touch from William could steady Catherine when the pressure of royal life felt overwhelming. Today, their clasped hands said everything that protocol prevented them from expressing aloud. The October wind picked up, and Catherine pulled her coat tighter around herself. William noticed immediately, as he always did, and stepped closer to shield her from a breeze. It was such a simple gesture, yet it perfectly captured the protective instinct that had driven him from their earliest days together. Even with the weight of royal duty on his shoulders, his first concern was always her comfort, her well-being. A crew member approached discreetly, indicating that departure time was approaching. William nodded acknowledgement, but his attention remained focused on Catherine. These final moments were theirs, precious and fleeting. Soon enough, he would switch back into his professional role, become the dutiful prince and skilled pilot that his position required. But for now, he was simply a husband saying goodbye to his wife. Catherine looked up at him, memorizing his face as she always did before his departures. The slight lines around his eyes that crinkled when he laughed. The way his hair fell slightly across his forehead, despite his attempts to keep it perfectly groomed. The gentle smile that was hers alone, different from the polite expressions he wore for cameras and crowds. She wanted to carry these details with her through the weeks ahead, when video calls and text messages would be their only connection. They began walking slowly toward the aircraft, neither wanting to quicken their pace and hasten their separation. Each step brought them closer to goodbye, closer to the moment when duty would pull them apart once again. The ground crew moved efficiently around them, but William and Catherine existed in their own bubble, focused entirely on each other. The aircraft stood ready, its engines beginning their familiar warm-up cycle. William's gear bag had already been loaded, along with the hopes and prayers that would travel with him on this mission. He had trained extensively for this deployment, prepared for every possible scenario he might encounter. But no amount of training could prepare him for the ache of leaving Catherine behind. As they reached the aircraft steps, the reality of separation settled over them like a shadow. This was it, the moment they both dreaded and knew was inevitable. William turned to face Catherine fully, his hands finding hers again. For a moment, they simply stood together, drawing strength from each other's presence. The watching personnel maintained their respectful distance, but several found themselves moved by the obvious depth of emotion between the couple. In a world where arranged marriages and political alliances were once the norm for royalty, William and Catherine represented something different. A genuine love match that had survived the pressures of public life and emerged stronger. Catherine reached up to straighten William's collar, a wifely gesture that was both practical and tender. Her fingers lingered on the fabric, reluctant to break the physical connection between them. William covered her hand with his own, stilling her movements and drawing her attention back to his face. In that moment, with the aircraft engines growing louder behind them and duty calling, they found themselves on the verge of something extraordinary. Neither planned what would happen next. Neither anticipated that their private goodbye would become a moment that would touch millions of hearts around the world. They simply followed their instincts, let their love guide them, and trusted that sometimes the most powerful statements are made without words. The stage was set for a farewell that would be remembered long after the deployment ended, a moment of authentic emotion that would remind the world why their love story had captured so many hearts. As they stood together on that windswept tarmac, neither William nor Catherine knew they were about to create a memory that would endure far beyond their own experience of it. What happened next would be debated and analyzed by body language experts, royal watchers, and relationship counselors for months to come. But in that moment, as the aircraft engines reached their final pitch and the time for departure arrived, William and Catherine weren't thinking about observers or protocols or the careful choreography that usually governed their public interactions. They were simply two people in love, facing another period of separation, allowing their hearts to dictate their actions. William stepped closer to Catherine, closing the small gap that royal protocol typically maintained between them in public settings. His hands moved to frame her face, thumbs gently brushing across her cheekbones in a gesture so intimate that several onlookers instinctively looked away, feeling as though they were intruding on something sacred. Catherine's eyes fluttered closed for a moment, leaning into his touch like a flower turning toward sunlight. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. The constant chatter of radio communications faded. The mechanical sounds of the aircraft became distant background music. Even the wind seemed to still as William leaned down and Catherine lifted her face to meet him. Their foreheads touched first, a moment of connection that spoke of shared strength and mutual understanding. Then, slowly, naturally, they came together in an embrace that would become legendary. It wasn't the careful, measured embrace that royal couples typically shared in public, the kind calculated to convey appropriate affection while maintaining dignified distance. This was real, raw, and utterly genuine. William's arms wrapped around Catherine completely, pulling her close against him as if he could somehow hold onto this moment, hold onto her, despite the inevitable separation ahead. Catherine melted into him, her own arms encircling his waist, her face pressed against his chest where she could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For 30 seconds that felt like eternity, they simply held each other. No words were exchanged, none were needed. The embrace communicated everything that mattered. Love that transcended duty, partnership that could weather any storm, and faith that they would find their way back to each other once again. Catherine's fingers pressed gently into the fabric of William's uniform, as if anchoring herself to this moment, to him, before he would be gone. A photographer, positioned discreetly at the edge of the airfield, captured the moment almost by accident. She had been assigned to document the routine departure, expecting the standard handshake and polite wave that usually marks such occasions. Instead, her camera preserved something extraordinary, a glimpse behind the royal facade into the beating heart of a real marriage. The image would later be described as one of the most emotionally powerful royal photographs ever taken. But in that moment, neither William nor Catherine was aware of cameras or observers. They existed entirely in their shared space, drawing strength from each other for the challenges ahead. William's hand moved slowly up Catherine's back, coming to rest between her shoulder blades, holding her steady against him. Catherine's breath came softly against his chest, and he could feel the slight tremor that ran through her, not from cold, but from emotion held carefully in check. When they finally began to separate, it was gradual, reluctant. William's hands remained on Catherine's shoulders as they pulled apart just enough to look at each other again. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant, full of love and pride for the man she had chosen to spend her life with. William's expression mirrored her emotions, a complex blend of love, regret at leaving, and determination to return to her. "I love you," he whispered, the words barely audible above the aircraft noise, but crystal clear between them. Catherine's response was equally soft but no less powerful. "Come home to us." The simple exchange carried the weight of their entire relationship, his need to serve balanced against their family's need for him to return safely. The crew chief approached respectfully, indicating that final departure was imminent. William nodded, understanding that duty was calling, but his eyes never left Catherine's face. She straightened his collar one final time, a gesture that was both practical and deeply personal. Her hands lingered on his chest for a moment before she stepped back, giving him the space he needed to transition into his professional role. As William turned toward the aircraft, Catherine remained where she stood, watching every step he took away from her. Her composure was remarkable. Years of royal training had taught her to manage her emotions in public settings. But those who observed carefully could see the slight tremble in her hands, the way she pressed her lips together to maintain control. William paused at the bottom of the aircraft steps and looked back. Catherine lifted her hand in a small wave, accompanied by a smile that managed to be both brave and heartbreaking. The contrast was striking, the poised Duchess maintaining her dignified exterior while every line of her body spoke of a woman watching her beloved walk away, uncertain when they would be together again. The aircraft door closed with a finality that echoed across the tarmac. Catherine remained in position, watching as the massive machine began to taxi toward the runway. She didn't move, didn't retreat to the comfort of the waiting vehicle until the aircraft had completely disappeared from view. Only then did she allow herself a moment of private emotion, her hand briefly covering her heart before she walked toward the car with the same grace she brought to every public appearance. The video footage of their farewell, captured by security cameras and the official photographer, began circulating almost immediately. Initially shared within official channels, it quickly found its way to social media, where it spread with remarkable speed. The hashtag Royal Love began trending within hours, accompanied by thousands of comments from people around the world who had been moved by the authentic emotion they had witnessed. Royal commentators struggled to find precedent for such a public display of genuine affection between working royals. The embrace had lasted longer than protocol typically permitted, had shown more emotion than royal training usually allowed, and had revealed a depth of feeling that transformed public perception of their relationship. Here was proof that their love story was real, that beneath the titles and duties and carefully managed public image, William and Catherine shared something precious and authentic. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People shared their own stories of difficult goodbyes, of love that endured separation, of relationships that survived the challenges of duty and distance. The royal couple's moment of vulnerability had created a connection with ordinary people facing similar struggles, proving that love's challenges and triumphs are universal human experiences. Military spouses around the world identified deeply with Catherine's brave smile and obvious emotion. They understood the weight of watching a loved one depart for dangerous or distant assignments, the strength required to maintain composure while one's heart was breaking. Catherine's dignity in that moment became a symbol of the quiet courage that military families demonstrate every day. The impact reached far beyond social media platforms and royal watching circles. Relationship experts praised the couple for modeling healthy, emotional intimacy in marriage. Psychologists noted the importance of physical affection and emotional vulnerability in maintaining strong partnerships. The embrace became a case study in authentic love, surviving the pressures of public life. But perhaps most significantly, the moment resonated with anyone who had ever loved someone enough to let them go in service of something larger than themselves. The farewell captured the bittersweet reality of loving someone committed to duty, the pride that coexists with worry, the strength required to support a partner's calling even when it means personal sacrifice. As the aircraft carrying William disappeared into the clouds, Catherine's composure remained intact, but the image of their embrace continued to spread around the world, touching hearts and inspiring conversations about love, duty, and the courage required to support those we love in their chosen paths. The moment that had felt so private, so personal between them, had somehow managed to speak to the universal human experience of love and loss, connection, and separation. In living rooms and coffee shops, on military bases, and in royal watching groups, people found themselves moved by what they had witnessed. The embrace had transcended its royal context to become something more fundamental, a reminder that love, when it is real and deep and true, has the power to touch hearts across all boundaries of class, nationality, and circumstance. The days following William's departure brought an unexpected phenomenon that caught both the palace and media outlets completely off guard. The photograph and video of their farewell embrace had taken on a life of its own, spreading across every social media platform and inspiring a global conversation about love, commitment, and the human side of royalty that the world rarely glimpsed. Catherine returned to Kensington Palace to find her private secretary overwhelmed by the volume of response to what had been intended as a routine departure documentation. Thousands of messages poured in from around the world, not the usual mix of criticism and praise that typically followed royal public appearances, but something entirely different. These were personal stories, heartfelt thanks, and expressions of connection that crossed every demographic boundary imaginable. A military wife from Texas wrote about watching the embrace with her own children, explaining how seeing Catherine's brave smile helped her daughter understand why Mommy sometimes cried when Daddy deployed. An elderly couple from Japan shared how the photograph reminded them of their own wartime separation 60 years earlier, when a young husband had left for military service not knowing if he would return. A single mother from London wrote about finding hope in the obvious love between William and Catherine, believing that if real love could survive the pressures of royal life, perhaps she could find it too. The response transcended typical royal coverage in remarkable ways. Major news networks found themselves analyzing not just the political or protocol implications of the embrace, but its emotional authenticity. Body language experts appeared on morning shows, pointing out the genuine nature of the couple's interaction. The way Catherine leaned into William's touch, how his protective posture spoke of deep emotional connection, the synchronization of their movements that suggested years of intimate partnership. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a relationship psychologist who had studied royal marriages for decades, found herself inundated with interview requests. What we witnessed, she explained to a packed television studio, was the rarest of things in public royal life, a completely unguarded moment between two people who genuinely love each other. The embrace wasn't performed for cameras or calculated for public consumption. It was simply two people allowing their authentic emotions to guide them, despite the very public setting. Catherine maintained her scheduled engagements throughout the week following William's departure, but those who worked closely with her noticed subtle changes in the public response wherever she appeared. Crowds seemed warmer, more personally invested in her well-being. Children who were presented to her during school visits asked innocently if she missed her husband, showing an awareness of her emotional experience that was unusual for royal interactions. During a visit to a military family support center, Catherine found herself in unexpectedly deep conversations with spouses of deployed service members. The usual formal exchanges gave way to genuine discussions about the challenges of maintaining family connections across distance and time zones. One young mother, whose husband was serving in Afghanistan, approached Catherine with tears in her eyes. "Your Grace," she said softly, "seeing you say goodbye to Prince William the way you did, it made me feel less alone in missing my husband. It showed that love is love, whether you're royal or ordinary people like us." Catherine's response, though private, was reported by those present as deeply moving and entirely without the careful language that typically characterized royal interactions. The palace communications team faced an unprecedented situation. Traditional royal protocol suggested that private moments should remain private, but this particular moment had clearly struck such a universal chord that attempting to suppress discussion would likely backfire. Instead, they made the unusual decision to embrace the response, allowing the moment to speak for itself without official commentary, but also without attempting to minimize its impact. Prince Charles, reached by phone at Clarence House, reportedly expressed both surprise and quiet pride at the global response to his son and daughter-in-law's farewell. Palace insiders suggested that the Prince of Wales saw the embrace as evidence that William and Catherine had successfully balanced their royal duties with authentic personal connection, something that had eluded royal couples for generations. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, William received updates about the extraordinary response to their farewell through carefully managed communication channels. His initial reaction, according to those with access to the information, was surprise followed by concern for Catherine's privacy. But as reports continued to arrive, describing the positive, deeply personal nature of the response, he began to understand that something significant had occurred. The psychological impact of the embrace extended far beyond its immediate viral spread. Marriage counselors reported increased discussion about physical affection and emotional vulnerability in their sessions. Military family support groups saw spikes in attendance as the embrace seemed to give people permission to acknowledge and discuss the real emotional costs of separation and service. Religious leaders from various faiths found themselves referencing the royal couple's goodbye in sermons about love, commitment, and the challenges of maintaining relationships through difficult circumstances. The embrace had somehow transcended its royal context to become a symbol of enduring love that spoke to universal human experiences. Academic researchers began studying the phenomenon, fascinated by how a 30-second moment could generate such widespread emotional response across cultural and geographical boundaries. Dr. Emily Rodriguez, a professor of communications at Oxford University, noted in her preliminary research that the embrace had achieved something unprecedented in modern royal history. It had made the monarchy feel genuinely relatable without diminishing its dignity or authority. The fashion industry took notice as well, but in unexpected ways. Rather than focusing on Catherine's coat or accessories as typically occurred, designers and style commentators found themselves discussing how her appearance that day, slightly wind-blown hair, natural makeup, comfortable rather than glamorous clothing, had actually enhanced rather than detracted from the moment's impact. The authenticity of her appearance had complemented the authenticity of her emotions. Children around the world began asking their parents about the princess who hugged the prince in ways that suggested they understood something important had happened. Teachers reported students drawing pictures of hugging families and discussing the importance of showing love even when saying goodbye. The embrace had somehow communicated lessons about love and family that resonated with the youngest observers. Artists and poets found inspiration in the image, creating works that explored themes of love, separation, and reunion. A street artist in London painted a mural based on the photograph that became a pilgrimage site for couples facing their own separations. Musicians wrote songs inspired by the moment, and writers crafted stories about love that endures despite duty's demands. The impact reached international diplomatic circles as well, where the embrace was quietly noted as evidence of the British royal family's continued relevance and emotional accessibility. Foreign governments and royal houses observed the global response with interest, recognizing that William and Catherine had achieved something that formal state visits and carefully orchestrated public appearances rarely accomplished. They had created genuine emotional connection across cultural boundaries. As the first week after William's departure drew to a close, it became clear that their farewell embrace had achieved something unprecedented in modern royal history. It had revealed the human heart beating within the institution of monarchy, demonstrating that duty and love could coexist beautifully when balanced with wisdom and authenticity. Catherine's daily life continued with its usual round of official engagements and family responsibilities, but she carried with her the knowledge that their private moment of vulnerability had somehow touched millions of lives. The letters and messages continued to arrive, each one a reminder that love, when expressed authentically, has the power to transcend every barrier and speak directly to the human heart. The embrace had become more than a farewell. It had become a testament to the enduring power of genuine love to inspire, comfort, and unite people across every boundary that typically divides them. 3 weeks later, as William's deployment neared its end, the world watched with renewed interest to see how the couple would handle their reunion. The farewell embrace had set a new standard for royal authenticity, and millions of people who had been moved by their goodbye found themselves emotionally invested in their homecoming. Catherine arrived at the same RAF base where their memorable farewell had taken place, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Word had somehow spread about William's return, and, despite security measures, larger crowds than usual had gathered outside the base perimeter. People held signs reading, "Welcome home, William," and "Thank you for your service," but many carried messages that referenced their viral farewell. "Love like yours inspires us all," and "True love stories never end." The Palace Communications team had debated extensively about media coverage for the reunion. The unprecedented response to the farewell had created expectations that were both exciting and concerning. Would the couple feel pressured to perform emotion for the cameras? Could any reunion possibly match the authentic impact of their spontaneous goodbye? Ultimately, they decided to allow limited coverage while maintaining respectful distance, trusting that William and Catherine would handle the moment with their characteristic grace. Catherine waited beside the same Range Rover, wearing a blue dress that many observers later noted was the same color as the coat from their farewell. Whether intentional or coincidental, the choice seemed symbolically perfect, a visual echo of their separation that now marked their reunion. Her excitement was carefully controlled, but unmistakable to those who had learned to read her subtle expressions over the years. When the aircraft touched down, Catherine's composure remained intact, but her hand moved unconsciously to smooth her hair, then to check that her dress hung properly. These small, very human gestures were captured by photographers and later analyzed as evidence of her genuine nervousness and excitement. Even after 6 years of marriage, even after numerous deployments and reunions, William's return still affected her deeply. The aircraft taxied to its designated position, and Catherine moved forward slightly, her eyes fixed on the door that would soon open to reveal her husband. The waiting seemed eternal, though it lasted only minutes. Ground crew moved efficiently to secure the aircraft and prepare for passenger disembarkation, but Catherine's attention was focused entirely on that closed door. When William finally appeared, stepping into the autumn sunlight in his flight suit, the change in Catherine was immediate and visible. Her carefully maintained royal composure gave way to something more fundamental: pure joy at seeing the man she loved safely home. Her smile was radiant, uninhibited, and completely authentic. William's own expression mirrored her emotions as his eyes found her across the tarmac. But this reunion would be different from their farewell in crucial ways. Where their goodbye had been spontaneous and unguarded, their reunion was witnessed by more observers and media representatives. The couple was acutely aware that the world was watching, that their moment 3 weeks earlier had created expectations and invested millions of people in their story. William walked toward Catherine with purpose, but also with visible awareness of their audience. The spontaneous intimacy of their farewell could not be replicated under such circumstances, nor should it be. Instead, they approached each other with dignity and evident joy, allowing their reunion to unfold naturally while maintaining the composure that their positions required. When they reached each other, William's hands found Catherine's waist while hers moved to his shoulders. Their embrace was warm, genuine, and lasting, but it was also clearly the greeting of two people who understood that their private emotions were being observed by millions. They held each other close, exchanged quiet words that only they could hear, and allowed themselves a moment of connection before the demands of duty resumed. The photographers captured the reunion from respectful distances, but the images told a complete story. William and Catherine's obvious happiness at being reunited was unmistakable, but so was their growth in handling public attention on their private emotions. They had learned from their viral farewell that authentic moments could touch hearts around the world, but they had also learned that such authenticity required careful balance between genuine emotion and public responsibility. The global response to their reunion was immediate, but notably different from the response to their farewell. While people celebrated William's safe return and the couple's obvious joy, there was also widespread recognition that the reunion could not and should not attempt to recreate the spontaneous magic of their goodbye. The farewell had been precious precisely because it was unplanned, unguarded, and utterly genuine. Social media filled with messages of congratulations and relief. Military families shared their own reunion stories, inspired by the royal couple's example to celebrate their own moments of homecoming. The hashtag Welcome Home William trended globally, accompanied by thousands of photos of military reunions, couple reunifications, and families celebrating togetherness after separation. In the days that followed, William and Catherine returned to their regular schedules of royal duties, but with a subtle difference in how they were perceived by the public. Their farewell embrace had humanized them in ways that years of careful public relations could never have achieved. They were still the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, still future King and Queen, but they were also simply William and Catherine, two people whose love for each other was genuine, deep, and inspiring. The long-term impact of their farewell moment continued to reverberate through popular culture and public discourse. Relationship experts cited their embrace as an example of healthy emotional expression in marriage. Military support organizations reported increased awareness and support for deployment families. The moment had somehow transformed public conversation about both royal life and relationship authenticity. More significantly, the embrace had shifted expectations for royal behavior in subtle but important ways. The public had responded so positively to genuine emotion that it became clear people craved authenticity from their public figures more than perfect protocol. William and Catherine had inadvertently created a new standard for royal engagement, one that valued human connection alongside institutional dignity. Years later, the photograph of their farewell would be included in exhibitions about royal history, relationship psychology, and the power of social media to amplify human moments. It became a teaching tool for communication students studying viral phenomena and a reference point for discussions about authentic leadership in the digital age. Catherine herself, in a rare personal reflection shared during a later interview, would describe the experience as a reminder that love expressed genuinely has power beyond anything we could have imagined. That moment belonged to us, but somehow it also belonged to everyone who saw it and found hope or comfort or inspiration in our love for each other. William, characteristically more reserved in his public reflections, would note simply that sometimes the most important moments are the ones that happen when you're not trying to create them. We were just saying goodbye to each other, but apparently the world needed to see that love still matters, still endures, still provides strength for the challenges ahead. The embrace had achieved something remarkable. It had made the royal family more relatable without diminishing their dignity, had revealed their humanity without compromising their authority, and had demonstrated that authentic love, when expressed genuinely, has the power to touch hearts across every boundary that might otherwise divide us. As William and Catherine settled back into their life together, caring for their children and fulfilling their royal duties, they carried with them the knowledge that their moment of vulnerability had somehow provided comfort and inspiration to millions of people around the world. Their farewell embrace had become more than a personal memory. It had become a testament to love's enduring power to unite, heal, and inspire hope in a world that desperately needed reminding that such love still exists. In the end, perhaps that was the most powerful lesson of all, that when love is real and deep and true, sharing it authentically, even unintentionally, creates ripples that extend far beyond our ability to imagine, touching lives and hearts in ways that remind us all of our fundamental shared humanity and our universal need for genuine connection.